What's going on, family? This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. I want to take a look at Bernard the Executioner Hopkins, later called the Alien. Now, he was born January 15th, 1965, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He stood 6 foot 1 inch and weighed 160 to 175 pounds. I had a 75-inch reach. He had total bouts of 67, 55 wins, 32 knockouts, 8 losses, 2 draws, and 2 no contests. Now, growing up in the Raymond Rosen projects in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Bernard Hopkins became a street goon, robbing and mugging and stealing all the kids in his neighborhood. Unfortunately for him, he ran into the wrong guy and he got shot and he was shanked a little bit. But that wouldn't stop Bernard Hopkins. Of course not. Bernard Hopkins would continue. If you bought a brand new pair of sneakers and some jewelry and just got paid, he'd be right there to greet you. He would smile in your face and rob you from behind. Unfortunately for Bernard Hopkins, at the age of 13, he would strong-arm the wrong man one more time and they would beat him up pretty good. But again, that didn't stop Bernard Hopkins. He would get charged at the age of 18 for 9 felonies, and he'd be introduced to Gatefoot Prison. He would spend 5.5 years there. In 1988, he began his boxing career. And I had followed Bernard Hopkins from the very beginning. I didn't know who he was. He was on an undercard in Atlantic City at a fight that I was at. And he would face a fighter by the name of Clinton Mitchell. He fought as a light heavyweight, and he would lose his first fight. And I didn't see him for a few months, and it turns out that he was reharnessing his skills. He would take a little hiatus so he can train properly. He signed with Bitch Lewis Production, who also had Michael Spinks as well. And he would get a win over Greg Page at the Blue Horizon. I was at that fight. I began to follow Bernard Hopkins. From 1990 to 1992, Hopkins scored 21 consecutive wins, no losses. He had 12 first-round knockouts. He was looking like Ray Robinson sometimes with the triple F hooks. He was a dynamic fighter when he started out fighting. He was a really good fighter. After winning the IBF Middleweight Championship strap, now he fought Roy Jones for that strap, and he would lose to Roy Jones. This fight took place on May 22nd, 1993. It was a vacant IBF belt on the line, and he would lose that opportunity. Bernard Hopkins didn't have enough IQ or skill to keep up with Roy Jones. Roy Jones was an Olympian. He was disqualified, so I think he wound up with the silver medal in 1988. And it was just a fascinating fight between those two men. December 17th, he would face Secundo Mercado. I was at that fight. Now, Mercado was a very good fighter. He was from Ecuador. He had punching power in both hands. He was knocking out a lot of these Madison Square Garden fighters. So when Bernard Hopkins fought him, I didn't know what to think, but he showed me that he was a very, very good fighter. He developed his IQ, and he wound up winning a title. He would face John David Jackson, Glenn Johnson. Both these, or at least Glenn Johnson became middleweight champion of the world. He had knocked out Roy Jones, and he fought Tarver and others. So Glenn Johnson was a very good fighter. He fought undefeated at the time Simon Brown, Antoine Eccles, 2001 Felix Tito Trinidad. He had fought Keith Holmes in that middleweight tournament. Don King had a middleweight tournament. He was trying to have one face, one name as a middleweight champion. Now at that Tito Trinidad fight, I was at that fight at Madison Square Garden. It was right after 9/11, and these two men would get it on at Madison Square Garden. Felix Trinidad was an outstanding welterweight. I consider him one of the top 10 greatest welterweight champions of all times. No question about it. And that was a war. It was a war in the sense not for Hopkins, but for Trinidad. Because Trinidad was, seek and destroy. He was coming forward. Everyone gave Trinidad a chance because of his punching power. But they took for granted that Bernard Hopkins had an IQ of a genius at that time. He knew how to grab, he knew how to turn, he knew how to lock you in, bait you in. He was on the ropes the majority of the time, but he would spin off the ropes. He would keep jabbing, he would keep moving. He would tie Trinidad up and frustrate him. And that's what happened to Tito Trinidad. He couldn't take the mental pressure. Now here, this was Puerto Rico. Bernard Hopkins knocked down, he actually took the flag from either Trinidad or Don King, and he dropped the Puerto Rican flag on the floor. And the entire arena was chasing Bernard Hopkins. Very disrespectful of him. But Bernard Hopkins wanted to get aroused and frustrate Tito Trinidad, and I believe he did that. Here you go, Don King and Bernard Hopkins. Once again, they're in Puerto Rico. And these two men didn't like each other, especially after what Bernard Hopkins did to the Puerto Rican flag. And here you have Bernard Hopkins on the scales. He weighs in closer to 156 to 158. It was a little lighter for this particular fight. He wanted to move a lot. And here you have Tito Trinidad. He looked good in the weigh-ins. Everyone gave Tito Trinidad a chance. He had Bernard Hopkins talking about Tito Trinidad's father. Like I said, he wanted to get a rouse up to Tito Trinidad. He was very disrespectful in that camp. But he did whatever he felt he needed to do to get an edge on Tito Trinidad. See September 29, 2001. Now, Tito Trinidad looked very good. He had defeated and knocked out, actually, Antonio Vargas. He had defeated Oscar De La Hoya, who was a 1992 gold medalist. As a matter of fact, he was the only Olympian to win a gold medal in boxing that year. Trinidad had a very good start coming into this particular fight. He had knocked out William Joppy for the middleweight championship strap. Here you see Bernard Hopkins with a beautiful short inside left hand, right to the chin of Tito Trinidad. His right guard is up. Perfect execution from Bernard Hopkins. Now, once again, you see Bernard Hopkins. His right hand is up. His left hand, beautiful inside short uppercut, right between the guards of Tito Trinidad. Tito Trinidad is coming in without a jab, and this is what will happen to you every time. And Bernard Hopkins would set trap for him so he wouldn't throw the jab. He would stay close to him and back off, close to him and back off. And Trinidad would eventually fall into an outstanding short uppercut. As you can see here, the frustration of Tito Trinidad, he would take his forearm and he would press it underneath the neck of Bernard Hopkins. As you can see here, Steve Smoger was the referee, looking on very closely. Trinidad is attempting to jab Bernard Hopkins, but Bernard Hopkins would beat him to the jab. Bernard Hopkins had a longer reach, but at the same time, he had better timing, and he had set him up for that shot. Once again, you can see here, Bernard Hopkins with a short inside uppercut, this time under the heart. And this will slow down the pace of Trinidad. You see, this is how you break fighters down. You have to know how to break an aggressive fighter down. You hit him under the heart. You hit him in the durameus. You hit him in the mandibular. You hit him in the temple. You hit him in the bridge of the nostril. If you can hit him in the left nostril, that's actually better. You hit him in the eye socket. What will happen is as he's breathing heavier because he got hit under the heart a few times, he will start to blow through his nose, swell up his eye. He would have to breathe through his nostrils. And he would open his mouth. You know, it's just a lot of things that you have to do in order to break this man down, but you have to know how to do it. And Bernard Hopkins was that's what they call him, the executioner. He knew how to execute those moves. Fantastic fighter was Bernard Hopkins. Once again, you can see here, Bernard Hopkins allowing Trinidad to set the pace, and he would counter the pace. What that means is Trinidad would constantly come forward aggressively, but Hopkins would move in the same pace, but he would keep Trinidad's legs going side to side. This is a disadvantage to a puncher because he's not designed to go side to side if he's trying to knock you out. But he's not aware he's going side to side. He's just following him around. Outstanding execution once again. Bernard Executioner Hopkins. Now this took place round after round, and as you can see, eventually he would be dropped as Trinidad. Beautiful punching power that was showed and exhibited by Bernard Executioner Hopkins. He realized that he had his man soft and tired. And once Trinidad started breathing through his mouth, it was time to open up with the artillery. Now, Hopkins was given $1 million to advertise for an Atlantic City casino. It was an online gambling service was what it actually was. And he would take that million and he would gamble it on himself. And he made at least $12 million from that particular bet. So it was a very good bet that Bernard Hopkins made. And as you can see here, once again from another angle, Trinidad goes down. Bernard Hopkins right there to greet him. This is a street fight. He would have knocked him out while he was laying on the ground. Because you can see here, Trinidad does not know where he is. He doesn't know he's still in danger, providing it was a street fight. Bernard Hopkins, something else. A few more shots here. Now you can take a look here. You can see Trinidad has no vision of Bernard Hopkins and his defense. Bernard Hopkins can do whatever he wants to Felix Trinidad at this point. And again, he keeps Trinidad at bay with the left hand. Now, if you notice how Bernard Hopkins turns his body completely when he drops the right hand. Trinidad is coming in with his hands down in a leaning forward position because he tries at the last minute to get away from the punch. And it makes him very vulnerable for combinations. Now, what I do, I love still shots. What I do when I'm examining historical fighters, I look and see what position the fighters are in, and I examine positions that other fighters were in the past. If Ray Robinson had Trinidad in his position, not only would he drop a right hand to the chin of Trinidad, but he would shift over and he would drop a body shot right under the solar plexus, floating rib, and he would come back on the other side and hit him in the spleen. These are the combinations that Ray Robinson was trained to throw. As you can see here, beautiful right uppercut from Bernard Hopkins to Felix Trinidad. Right after this, educationally would come a left hook. Now, if you notice, when Trinidad throws a right hand, Hopkins gets underneath it with both hands high. Total defense. And he can see the body exposure of Trinidad. He can come with a straight right hand to the body from that position. Come up with a left hook for defense. Once again, the reason why Trinidad had problems with Hopkins is because he didn't see an opening. As you can see, the right hand is always up on Bernard Hopkins. And the left hand is coming right to Trinidad's chin. Steve Smoger will send Bernard Hopkins over to a neutral corner as Trinidad takes a seat. Fight's over, and we have a unified middleweight champion of the world. Here you have Bernard Hopkins after the fight with master trainer Bowie Fischer. Bernard Hopkins would win the Sugar Ray Robinson Award, and he would become the unified middleweight champion of the world. First time since Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Now, Bernard Executioner Hopkins' next opponent would be a young Jermaine Taylor. And this would be Bernard Hopkins' 21st title defense. Jermaine Taylor was undefeated, and he was looking to take the unified middleweight championship strap away from Bernard Hopkins. Now, on July 16, 2005, Taylor would meet Hopkins. Middleweight championship strap was on the line. Now, to tailor the tape, Bernard Hopkins stood 6 foot 1 inch. He weighed 160 pounds. Jermaine Taylor, 6 foot 1 inch, 160 pounds. Hopkins was 40 years of age. Taylor was 26 years of age. Bernard Hopkins had a pro record of 46-2-1 with 32 knockouts. Taylor had a pro record of 23-0 with 17 knockouts. The world titles that Bernard Hopkins would have would be the IBF, WBC, and the WBA. He would win the IBF 1995, WBC 2001, and he would have the World Middleweight Championship strap 2001. His most impressive fights would be Glenn Johnson, 11-round knockout, 1997. Felix Tito Trinidad, 12-round knockout, 2001. Oscar De La Hoya, 9th-round knockout, 2004. Most impressive fights for Jermaine Taylor would be Raul Marquez, 9th round knockout, 2004. Now, Raul Marquez was part of that 2002, 2002 Olympic team. He didn't win a gold medal. De La Hoya did. William Joppy, he would defeat him in 12 rounds, 2004. Daniel Edgard, he would knock him out in 3 rounds, 2005. Now, as you can see here, Bernard Hopkins would have his hands full because Taylor would be right in his face the entire fight. Taylor refused to be denied, refused to be outworked, outbullied, and IQ'd from Bernard Hopkins. Now here you see Bernard Hopkins with a beautiful left jab when Taylor drops his guard. Now look at the distance between Taylor and Bernard Hopkins. Now Hopkins brings out his old school tactics. He has a left elbow in the back spine of Jermaine Taylor. Very good straight right hand to Jermaine Taylor's jaw. Now here you see a right hand on the side of the head from Taylor to Hopkins. At this point in time, Taylor had already collided with Hopkins and suffered a laceration, a gash on his forehead. Taylor jabs. Hopkins is able to slip his jab. Hopkins has a beautiful straight left jab to the eye of Jermaine Taylor. Now, what caused problems in the scoring for Bernard Hopkins is when he fell off balance. He was actually dropped. They called it a knockdown because Hopkins was about to go down, but because of the ropes, he didn't hit the floor, but that's actually a knockdown. Very good right hand from Taylor to Bernard Hopkins. Now, leading up to their second fight in a rematch, Jermaine Taylor holds up a baby and tells Bernard Hopkins to stop crying. Bernard Hopkins was complaining, making excuses, and he got his second shot. Very good jab by Bernard Hopkins. But if you notice, from the Trinidad fight, his right hand is lower than it was when he fought Trinidad. He was 40 years of age at this point in time in his career, but he went to desperado mode because he's never been in a position where he had to come back to try and win his title. So Bernard Hopkins, Jermaine Taylor. Unfortunately for Hopkins, he just couldn't beat Jermaine Taylor. That was what it was. He claimed it on weight, so he moved up to light heavyweight division. And still the middleweight champion of the world, Jermaine Taylor. Fantastic effort by Jermaine Taylor. Here you have Bernard Hopkins, Father Time. Bernard Hopkins goes to Canada to face Sean Pascal. So Bernard Hopkins was a very good middleweight and a very, very good light heavyweight. He was champion in both divisions. Now, Antonio Tarver would take the title away from Roy Jones Jr. He would take the light heavyweight championship strap away from Roy Jones Jr. And they would have two fights. First fight was controversial. Most people thought that Antonio Tarver won. Second fight, Tarver would knock out Roy Jones first time in his career. And this would be the third fight. And this would set up the Bernard Hopkins fight with Antonio Tarver. Antonio Tarver. He was a very good light heavyweight champion. And he would defeat Roy Jones. He would now hold the light heavyweight championship strap that Bernard Executioner Hopkins would want. And they would name this fight Fight to the Finish. This would be the moment of truth for Bernard Hopkins. He was looking to become middleweight and light heavyweight champion of the world. And in order to accomplish that, he would have to face Antonio Tarver. Now, he wanted to face Roy Jones for that light heavyweight championship strap, but Jones decided to go up and face John Ruiz for the heavyweight championship strap, the WBA version. After accomplishing that, Roy Jones would be forced to come back down to light heavyweight because Antonio Tarver kept on heckling him. My opinion is Jones should have retired because he lost too much weight trying to come back down to 175. And he was never the same fighter. And that's what caused the knockout, I believe, because he didn't have the potassium or the electrolytes in his body. Just a different fighter. So this is Scrapbook Boxing Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. I just wanted to go back in time to Bernard Hopkins. A few fights of his career. Here you have Roy Jones. Let Antonio Tarver know, look, we fought 3 times, man, you got this. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Salute to Bernard Hopkins, Roy Jones, Antonio Tarver. Salute to my subscribers. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Salute.